The Ember Chronicles Part 10 of the Galactic War Saga. Echoes of the Rift. Chapter 1, Aftermath. The Eclipsera drifted silently at the edge of the rift, its hull battered but steadfast against the relentless cosmic storm outside. Electric blues and violent purples twisted across the void, interlaced with flashes of gold that tore through space like celestial lightning. The rift pulsed with a slow, haunting rhythm, its heartbeat matched only by the fragile pulse of the ship itself. Captain Kael stood alone on the bridge, eyes locked on the tempest beyond the viewport. The artifact rested in its containment chamber, a crystalline monolith glowing softly with an otherworldly light. It was a beacon of power and a weight on their souls, a mystery wrapped in secrets no one fully understood. Her hands gripped the cold metal railing, knuckles pale, as thoughts churned beneath a calm exterior. Since escaping the shattered citadel, strange occurrences plagued the crew. Whispers that seemed to drift inside the mind, fleeting shadows flickering at the edge of vision, moments where time itself staggered like a wounded animal. Lieutenant Mira approached quietly, her gaze sharp and full of concern. The ship's sensors had been tracking the artifact's evolving energy signature. The readings revealed fluctuations unlike anything cataloged before. Localized distortions in the rift's fabric growing ever more unstable. The boundary between worlds was fraying. The question lingered in the stale air. How long before the instability became a breach? The answer hovered between days and hours, impossible to pin down with certainty. Every pulse from the monolith fed the growing chaos outside, a dance of power and destruction entwined. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, tossing crew members off balance as alarms blared through the corridors. Invisible forces gripped the Eclipsera, pulling it toward the heart of the storm. The rift seemed alive, tendrils of raw energy reaching out like grasping fingers desperate to tear the ship apart. Through the viewport, impossible visions flickered, shifting realms of light and shadow beyond comprehension, impossible geometries twisting and folding in ways the mind struggled to grasp. The artifact's glow surged in response, as if engaged in a silent battle with the churning tempest, feeding and fueling the turmoil. Captain Kael's thoughts sharpened with clarity born of necessity. The power in their hands was a gamble with the very fabric of existence. Yet to hesitate was to invite oblivion. The crew stirred into action, preparing to dive headlong into the unknown forces that lurked beyond the rift's veil. The storm outside screamed with fury as the Eclipsera accelerated toward the heart of the chaos, every moment a test of will against the encroaching darkness. The battle for the future of the galaxy had just begun. Chapter 2. Into the Maelstrom. The Eclipsera plunged deeper into the rift's swirling chaos, engines roaring against the tempest's fury. Space warped around the ship, stars bending and twisting as if reality itself was unraveling. Energy storms crackled, showering the hull with arcs of violet and blue fire. The crew moved with practiced precision, each step measured against the unpredictable violence outside. Captain Kael remained on the bridge, eyes scanning sensor feeds that flickered like faulty memories. The monolith's power pulsed in resonance with the storm, a heartbeat echoing in the dark. It was as if the artifact was both a key and a lock, opening gateways that should have remained sealed. Lieutenant Mira monitored the energy flux, her brow furrowed in concentration. Fluctuations intensified, subtle shifts growing into violent spasms that threatened to tear holes in the fabric of space-time. The rift was no longer a storm but a living force, hungry, restless, unpredictable. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. The rift's energies converged in a blinding surge, and the Eclipsera was caught in a vortex of light and shadow. Time seemed to stretch and compress in a maddening pulse. Crew members gripped consoles as the ship's structure groaned under unseen pressure. Through the swirling mists, distant shapes emerged. Massive, spectral forms woven from starlight and shadow. The Ascendant Relic's power had drawn their attention. They moved like phantoms through the maelstrom, enigmatic and ancient. Calitha's voice steadied the bridge. The battle had shifted. No longer just a war of fleets or weapons. It had become a war of existence itself. The crew braced for the unknown, eyes fixed on the shifting silhouettes, minds racing to understand the forces arrayed against them. The monolith pulsed brighter, tendrils of light reaching out into the void, as if responding to the spectral figures. Power, ancient and unfathomable, hung heavy in the air, a promise and a threat entwined. Every moment stretched taut with tension. The Eclipsera was a fragile lifeline between order and chaos, a beacon flickering in the heart of a cosmic storm that threatened to consume all. The war had entered a new dimension, and the echoes of the rift would soon reveal their true cost. Chapter 3: Shadows Within. The hum of the Eclipsera was a constant undercurrent amid the flickering lights and strained metal. The crew moved through the ship like shadows themselves, faces etched with fatigue and determination. The artifact sat quiet now, but its presence was palpable, a weight that pressed on every mind aboard. Captain Kael walked the corridors, her gaze heavy with the burden of command. The visions that had haunted her since the Citadel lingered like ghosts, fragments of futures possible and doomed. Each step echoed her inner turmoil. How much of herself was she willing to sacrifice to wield the power they had stolen? Lieutenant Myra's readings grew more troubling with every cycle. The rift's distortions were spreading, fracturing the very space they traveled through. The artifact's energy was seeping beyond its containment, subtle but relentless. Unseen fissures opened in the fabric of reality, tiny breaches that could widen with catastrophic consequences. Tensions simmered among the crew, frayed nerves snapping in whispered arguments and uneasy glances. Some feared the artifact as a cursed relic, a harbinger of doom. Others saw it as salvation, the ultimate weapon to end the war and restore balance. The Eclipsera's systems began to pulse with strange frequencies, lights dimming and flaring unpredictably. The ship itself seemed alive, attuned to the artifact's growing influence. The rift storm outside mirrored the chaos within, a tempest of fear, hope, and power. Deep in the lower decks, Sergeant Jalen led a security team investigating reports of strange shadows flickering just beyond the edge of the crew's perception. Figures that vanished when approached, whispers that echoed in empty halls. The line between reality and illusion blurred. Captain Kael gathered her senior officers in the war room, faces drawn but resolute. Strategy shifted from offense to survival as the true nature of their prize came into focus. To control the artifact was to control the rift itself, or be consumed by it. Outside, the rift's storm raged on, an endless howl that promised no rest. The war was no longer just fought with weapons and tactics. It was fought with will, with sacrifice, and with the shadows that lurked deep within. Chapter 4: Fractured Realities. The Eclipsera drifted closer to the eye of the rift, where space itself seemed to twist and fold unnaturally. Sensor arrays flickered as distorted readings flooded the bridge, data warped by the unstable energies surrounding them. The boundaries between dimensions had thinned dangerously, and the artifact's power pulsed with an almost sentient rhythm, as if feeding from the rift's chaos. Captain Kael stood silently, watching the swirling maelstrom outside. Every moment felt like a step deeper into a labyrinth of uncertainty, where the rules of physics bent and fractured like shattered glass. The crew moved with a cautious urgency, balancing fear and hope as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. Lieutenant Mira continued her relentless scans, her brow furrowed in concentration. Tiny anomalies appeared and disappeared in the readings, brief glimpses of impossible structures and ghostly echoes of past events. The artifact was awakening something buried deep within the rift, something ancient and powerful beyond their comprehension. Below deck, whispers of unrest grew among the crew. Murmurs of strange dreams and unsettling visions swept through the corridors. Some claimed to have seen fleeting images of distant worlds consumed by shadow. Others spoke of voices calling from the darkness, promising salvation or destruction. Sergeant Jalen reported an increase in unexplained phenomena during his patrols. Shadows darted just beyond sight, corridors warped and shifted, and a chilling cold seemed to seep into the very bones of the ship. The line between reality and illusion blurred further with each passing hour. Kael convened an emergency council with her senior officers, the weight of their predicament pressing down like gravity. The artifact's influence was spreading, fracturing not just space but the minds of those aboard. They faced a choice: harness this power and risk losing themselves, or find a way to contain it before it unraveled everything. The Eclipsera's engines hummed low, ready to leap through the rift at a moment's notice. Outside, the storm raged, a cosmic tempest that whispered secrets and threats in equal measure. The galaxy held its breath as the crew prepared to confront the unknown. In this fractured reality, every decision carried the weight of existence itself. The echoes of the rift promised both revelation and ruin. Chapter 5: The Rift's Whisper. The storm outside intensified, a raging torrent of raw energy and swirling cosmic debris that battered the Eclipsera's shields and rattled its frame. The rift was alive, a vast entity pulsing with secrets older than any star. The ship's sensors struggled to parse the chaos, readings flooded with interference and anomalies. It was a battle against the impossible. Inside the ship, the crew moved like shadows caught in a storm. Exhaustion weighed on every face, but there was no time to rest. The artifact's presence echoed in every corner, its power seeping into the ship's systems and minds alike. Whispers, half-heard and unplaceable, teased the edges of consciousness. Captain Kael stood at the bridge's helm, the hum of the monolith a constant undercurrent to the chaos outside. Every moment the artifact pulsed, the rift responded in kind, violent surges that threatened to tear the fragile fabric holding their reality together. Lieutenant Myra's voice came over the calm but urgent. The rift's instability was accelerating, localized spatial fractures blossoming like cracks in glass. The Eclipsera's containment fields held, for now, but the artifact's energy was a wildfire trapped in a cage of glass. Deep in the lower decks, Sergeant Jalen and his security team reported strange phenomena. Hallways bending impossibly, lights flickering with eerie synchronicity, shadows that moved against the light. The line between physical and spectral blurred, fear mounting among the crew. Kael's mind raced. This was no ordinary battle. It was a fight against a force that bent the rules of existence itself. The artifact was both weapon and beacon, drawing ancient powers and dangers from the depths of the rift. In a sudden surge, the monolith emitted a pulse of pure energy that rippled through the ship. Systems surged, lights flared, and every crew member felt the rush. A moment of raw power that promised salvation or destruction. The Eclipsera trembled on the edge of oblivion, its fate intertwined with the artifact's mysterious will. Outside, the rift whispered secrets in a language lost to time, challenging all who dared to listen. The war had entered its most perilous phase, and the echoes of the rift were just beginning to speak. Chapter 6: Breaking Point. The relentless howl of the rift battered the Eclipsera from all sides, each wave of energy testing the ship's limits. Metal groaned under strain, systems flickered in protest, but the vessel held, fragile yet defiant amid the chaos. Every crew member felt the weight of the moment, as if the very fabric of their existence hung by a thread. Captain Kael stood at the helm, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. The monolith's power pulsed in rhythm with the storm outside, a heartbeat both ominous and mesmerizing. This fragile balance could shatter at any moment, unleashing forces no one could contain. Lieutenant Mira worked tirelessly at the sensor array, her fingers flying over controls, scanning for any sign of stability in the chaos. The rift's fractures deepened, spatial distortions blossoming like wounds on the ship's perimeter. The artifact's energy surged unpredictably, sometimes calming, sometimes raging like a tempest. Below decks, the shadows grew bolder. Crew members reported strange sensations, cold touches, fleeting visions, voices whispering forgotten names. Sergeant Jalen's patrols encountered corridors that bent impossibly, rooms that seemed to change when no one was looking. The ship itself seemed to warp, a living maze shaped by the rift's will. Tensions among the crew reached a boiling point. Fear mixed with desperation, loyalty challenged by doubt. Some whispered of abandoning the artifact, of returning to safer stars. Others saw it as their only hope, a key to ending the endless war that had scarred the galaxy. In the command center, Kael made a decision. To control the artifact was to confront the rift's heart itself. They would dive deeper, past the storm's eye, to the source of the disturbance. It was a gamble, one that could save them or doom them all. As the Eclipsera prepared for the plunge, the monolith flared with sudden brilliance. Tendrils of light reached out, weaving through the ship like living threads, binding crew and machine alike. The artifact's power was awakening, no longer a dormant relic, but a force demanding to be reckoned with. The war had become a reckoning, and the fragile line between salvation and destruction was about to be crossed. Chapter 7: Descent into the Abyss. The Eclipsera shuddered as it crossed the threshold into the rift's eye, where space folded inward like a great black wound in the cosmos. Stars vanished into swirling shadows, and the very air inside the ship seemed to thicken with anticipation. Every sensor flickered uncertainly, signals distorted beyond recognition. Captain Kael stood steady on the bridge, the glow of the monolith casting eerie patterns on her face. The artifact's light pulsed faster now, synchronizing with the rhythm of the ship itself. It was as if the vessel and the relic were becoming one, an unholy fusion of flesh, steel, and ancient power. Lieutenant Myra's hands moved swiftly over the controls, fighting against the interference, trying to map the shifting anomalies. The rift was no longer just a storm, but a vast consciousness, old, inscrutable, and watching. It reached out with tendrils of energy that scraped and clawed at the Eclipsera's hull, testing its defenses. Deep below, Sergeant Jalen and his team felt the ship's corridors twist and pulse around them. Walls breathed, floors rippled like liquid, and unseen eyes seemed to follow their every step. The crew's nerves frayed as reality warped, the familiar turning alien in an instant. Kael's mind raced with memories of ancient legends whispered by ascendant elders. Warnings of power that could reshape existence but demanded a price. The artifact they carried was the key, but the lock was far more dangerous than they had imagined. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing crew to the decks as alarms screamed. The rift unleashed a violent surge, an explosion of light and shadow that tore through space-time itself. The monolith flared, its energy blasting outward in a wave that pushed the Eclipsera back from the brink. Silence fell, broken only by the crew's ragged breaths. The storm had not ended, only paused. The rift's gaze lingered, waiting, calculating. Captain Kael knew the descent had only just begun. The abyss was alive, and it demanded a reckoning. Chapter 8: The Ascendant Warning. The Eclipsera hung in the silent void at the heart of the rift, the swirling chaos outside reduced to a distant roar. The ship's systems flickered, still recovering from the last surge that nearly tore them apart. The artifact, once a dormant monolith, now pulsed with a restless energy that seemed to reach beyond the ship's hull, into the very fabric of reality. Captain Kael stood before the containment chamber, eyes locked on the glowing crystalline form. It was impossible to ignore the weight of what they carried, an ancient power awakened from a slumber that spanned millennia. The monolith hummed with life, veins of electric blue energy running through its faceted surface, lighting the chamber with an eerie glow. Then, as if summoned by their collective focus, a shimmering holographic figure materialized above the artifact. The image was translucent yet vivid, an ascendant elder, regal and solemn, draped in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. Her eyes glowed faintly with the wisdom of ages, her voice resonating inside the minds of every officer in the room without the need for words. She spoke of the Ascendant's ancient war, a conflict that had nearly destroyed the galaxy eons ago. The artifact was their last hope, a containment device meant to imprison a force darker and more destructive than any weapon known to humankind. But the power it contained was volatile, a double-edged sword that could grant unimaginable strength or unravel existence itself. The Elder's warning was clear. Those who sought to wield the artifact's power must do so with caution and humility. The rift was not just a natural phenomenon, but a manifestation of that ancient darkness, a scar in space-time that had bled into the present. The artifact was both key and lock. To control, it was to confront the darkness without and within. As the hologram faded, a heavy silence settled over the chamber. The crew felt the enormity of their task. They were custodians of a power that could tip the balance of the galaxy, for salvation or annihilation. Lieutenant Myra's voice broke the silence, calm but resolute. The artifact's energy signature was intensifying, showing signs of resonance with the ship's core systems. The Eclipsera itself was becoming a conduit, a nexus of ancient power and human will. Captain Calith turned to her officers, her gaze steely. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the consequences of their choices. But there was no turning back. To survive the war, to save what remained of the galaxy, they had to embrace the unknown and face the rift's darkness head-on. Outside, the rift churned once more, its storm a living entity that seemed to pulse with anticipation. The echoes of the past whispered warnings carried on cosmic winds. The future was fragile, and every decision would ripple through time and space. The crew braced themselves for what was to come. The Ascendant's warning had set the stage, but the true reckoning was just beginning. Chapter 9. Shadows of the Past. The Eclipsera lingered in the rift's heart, its hull humming with the artifact's unpredictable energy. Outside, the cosmic storm twisted in endless turmoil, a tempest born from the scars of ancient wars long forgotten. Inside, the crew wrestled with memories and fears that seemed to echo across time itself. Captain Calith retreated to the ship's observation deck, seeking a moment of solitude beneath the fractured stars. The holographic warning from the Ascendant Elder haunted her thoughts. The artifact was no mere weapon. It was a legacy, a burden passed down from a civilization whose echoes still resonated in the shadows of the rift. Lieutenant Mira joined her quietly, her eyes reflecting the swirling void beyond the viewport. She spoke of the Ascendant's history, a civilization that had once ruled the stars, wielding power that bent reality to their will. Their downfall was swift and catastrophic, brought on by hubris and a darkness that twisted their creations against them. The artifact they now carried was both a prison and a promise. It held the key to immense power, but threatened to unleash the very darkness it was designed to contain. The rift itself was a wound in space-time, a reminder of the Ascendant's final battle, a battle that nearly erased existence. As the two officers discussed strategy, the ship's systems flickered and subtle tremors rippled through the Eclipsera. The artifact's energy was surging, resonating with the ship's core in ways that defied understanding. The crew reported strange phenomena, visions of forgotten worlds, echoes of ancient battles replaying like ghostly memories. Sergeant Jalen led patrols through the twisting corridors, where reality seemed to bend and shift. Shadows danced at the edge of perception, fleeting and intangible. The line between past and present blurred, threatening to consume the minds of those who lingered too long. Kael realized that to confront the rift's darkness, they had to confront their own fears and history. The war was not just external. It was internal, a battle for the soul of those who bore the artifact's burden. Plans were made to delve deeper into the rift's mysteries, to uncover the Ascendant's secrets hidden within its depths. But every discovery carried risk. The echoes of the past were powerful and unpredictable, and the future remained uncertain. Outside, the storm raged on, a living reminder that the past and present were entwined in a fragile dance. The Eclipsera was a fragile beacon in the tempest, and its crew stood at the edge of revelation and ruin. Chapter 10: The Breach. The Eclipsera trembled under the mounting pressure of the rift's growing unrest. Sensors screamed warnings, lights flickered, and the air vibrated with a tension that seemed almost tangible. The artifact's energy pulsed stronger now, resonating through the ship's core like a heartbeat on the edge of collapse. Captain Kael stood steady, commanding the bridge with a focus born from years of hardship. The rift's chaotic storm had transformed into something darker, a shifting, creeping force that pressed against the boundaries of reality itself. The ship's shields held, but barely. Lieutenant Myra's fingers danced over the controls, analyzing the growing instability. Spatial distortions were no longer contained. Fissures had begun to tear open in the fabric of space-time. Through these breaches, fleeting glimpses of other realities flashed. Warped versions of their own world, twisted and alien. Deep within the ship, the crew felt the weight of impending disaster. Strange phenomena intensified. Hallways curved impossibly. Gravity shifted without warning, and ghostly echoes haunted the corridors. Sergeant Jalen's teams reported increased encounters with unexplainable phenomena. Shadows that moved against the light, whispers that spoke in forgotten tongues. Then, without warning, the breach widened. A sudden explosion of light and sound rocked the Eclipsera, throwing crew to the decks and sending alarms into a frantic chorus. The rift's energy surged through the breach, a torrent of raw power that threatened to tear the ship apart. Amid the chaos, the artifact flared brilliantly, unleashing a wave of energy that pushed back the encroaching storm. The monolith's light washed over the ship, stabilizing the immediate danger but revealing a chilling truth. The rift was awakening something far older, far more dangerous than any had imagined. Captain Kael's mind raced. They were no longer just survivors of a cosmic war. They'd become guardians of a force that could unravel reality itself. The breach was a doorway, a fracture that invited both salvation and destruction. As the Eclipsera struggled to regain control, the crew knew one thing with certainty. The war had entered its deadliest phase. The echoes of the rift were louder now, and the price of their choices was yet to be revealed. Chapter 11: Fractured Alliances. The atmosphere aboard the Eclipsera was thick with tension, a suffocating weight that pressed on every soul within its steel confines. The recent breach had shaken more than the ship's hull. It had fractured the fragile bonds holding the crew together. Whispers circulated in dim corridors, voices heavy with doubt and fear. Captain Kael moved through the ship's heart, her presence a beacon of steadiness amid the growing unrest. Yet even she felt the sting of uncertainty. A familiar echo from battles past, from the Galactic War's earliest days when trust had been the most precious and fragile currency. Memories surfaced like ghosts. The desperate stand at Nova Centauri, where alliances had been forged in fire and blood. The betrayal on the shadowed moon of Caris, when friends had become foes overnight. Those wounds still bled beneath the surface, threatening to reopen as the rift's darkness deepened. Lieutenant Mira met Kael in the command center, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion and something darker, suspicion. The artifact's energy fluctuations had intensified, now intertwined with mysterious signals emanating from unknown vessels lurking just beyond the rift's perimeter. Not all allies were what they seemed. Reports came in from reconnaissance teams. Vessels that once flew the banner of the Galactic Coalition now acted with unpredictable hostility. The war had splintered into factions, each chasing their own agendas in the shadow of the rift's power. The fragile unity that had held for decades was unraveling. Kael recalled the ancient ascendant warnings from Book 3, how pride and division had doomed a civilization that once ruled the stars. The parallels were impossible to ignore. The monolith's power was a catalyst, igniting old grudges and new ambitions alike. In the war room, maps glowed with clusters of fleets, shifting and repositioning, signals encrypted and broken in equal measure. Trust was a scarce commodity. Every move was calculated with caution. The rift's chaos had become a breeding ground for treachery. As tension mounted, an encrypted message pierced the static, a call for parley from a rogue faction led by General Vorin, a figure with a history intertwined with Kael's own. His last betrayal had nearly shattered the Coalition's defenses years ago. Now, he sought an uneasy alliance, driven by rumors of the artifact's true power. Kael faced a choice steeped in history and risk. Accepting meant potential salvation or catastrophe. Refusing could ignite a war that would consume all. Outside, the rift's storm raged, a cosmic maelstrom reflecting the turmoil within. The echoes of past wars whispered warnings, reminding all that power without unity was a path to ruin. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the fate of the galaxy. Alliances would be tested, secrets unveiled, and sacrifices demanded. And the monolith's light pulsed, a silent reminder that the darkest shadows often lie within. The storm over the fractured moon raged without pause, a swirling tempest of dust and lightning that boiled across the shattered surface like a living wound. The Eidolon spear hung just beyond the debris field, its hull blackened from skirmishes fought only hours before, her shield still stuttering with faint arcs of static discharge. Inside, the corridors vibrated with an unsteady rhythm, the pulse of a ship that had been pushed far beyond its limits. A slow, resonant hum rolled through the bulkheads, low and alien, reverberating in the bones of every crew member. It was not a sound made by the ship's engines, nor any known technology of the human fleets. It was the artifact, locked deep within the armored vault of the forward hold. It pulsed like a second heart, each beat twisting the air and filling it with a subtle distortion that made colors seem sharper, shadows seem longer, and memories feel dangerously close to the surface. Commander Kael stood alone in the observation chamber, his gaze fixed on the fractured moon. Through the reinforced glass, he could see the faint threads of energy weaving through the debris like the sinews of some vast, invisible beast. He had been here before, in spirit if not in flesh. In Book 6, during the siege of the Aegis Rift, the ascendant relic they had recovered had shown him a vision of a broken celestial body, much like this one. It had been a warning, though then he had not understood. Now, with the artifact's whispers pressing at the edges of his mind, the meaning was beginning to take shape, though its full truth remained beyond his grasp. The doors behind him parted with a whisper of servos, and the boarding party's survivors entered. They moved differently now, slower, heavier, as though carrying an unseen weight. Their armor bore the marks of the Citadel's defenses, deep scorches and gashes that would have felled lesser soldiers. Yet they walked upright, their eyes bright with a strange, unnatural light. At their center, encased in a containment field that shimmered faintly against the dim chamber lighting, hovered the ascendant artifact. Its surface was impossible to define, its geometry folding in on itself in ways the mind could not reconcile. It did not glow so much as it bled light, strands of gold and violet unspooling into the air before vanishing into nothing. Kael turned slowly, meeting the gaze of Captain Arden. No words passed between them. There was no need. The weight of what they had brought aboard was felt by every soul on the ship. The Citadel's dying hologram of the Ascendant Elder still echoed in Kaelin's mind. You hold the fracture that breaks the veil between what is and what should never be. Use it, and the stars will remember the day you chose to open the wound. The artifact pulsed again, and this time the deck beneath their feet seemed to shift. Not physically, but perceptually, as if the space they occupied was subtly misaligned with the rest of reality. Kaelin's vision blurred for the briefest instant, and he caught the impression of something vast moving in the void beyond the shattered moon. Something that was not bound by the normal laws of the universe. In the engineering decks, systems began to fail without reason. Plating flickered. Air pressure dropped and then stabilized without intervention. The crew whispered about hearing voices in the corridors, voices speaking in languages no translator could identify. One crewman swore he had seen the shadow of his dead sister standing at the end of a hall before she vanished into the wall. The boarding party gathered around the containment field. Arden placed a gauntlet hand against the barrier, her expression unreadable. The artifact responded, its pulse quickening, the golden-violet strands extending toward her fingertips as though recognizing her. Kaelin moved forward sharply, the unease in his gut knotting tighter. But before he could intervene, the ship lurched violently. Warning sirens cut through the chamber as tactical displays lit up in the walls. Multiple unidentified signatures had emerged from the debris field. No IFF codes, no recognizable energy readings, only a creeping wave of darkness on the sensors. The distortion wasn't just electronic. It felt alive, as though something had noticed the artifact's presence and was answering the call. The crew scrambled to battle stations. The artifact pulsed in time with the proximity alerts, as if drawing the enemy in. Kaelin could feel it pulling on him now, threads of thought unspooling into visions he could not fully see. Stars collapsing, oceans boiling, voices chanting in unison from somewhere far beyond the veil. Arden looked back at him, her eyes burning with something fierce and unyielding. She spoke, but her words were swallowed by the hum of the artifact. He could read her lips, though. We can use it. The deck shook again, harder this time, as the first of the enemy ships broke through the debris curtain. They were unlike anything in known records. Organic shapes fused with dark metal, their hulls rippling as though alive. They moved with predatory precision, closing in without firing. Kaelin felt it then, the choice the Elder's hologram had warned about. The artifact could destroy these ships. He knew it instinctively, the same way a drowning man knows which direction is up. But the cost, the after, was hidden from him, cloaked in shadow. The crew waited for his order. The hum filled the chamber until it was all he could hear, all he could think. The edges of reality seemed to fray, colors bleeding into one another, the air thickening as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Kaelin stepped toward the containment field. The artifact pulsed once more, and the light it bled into the air bent and twisted around him, drawing him in. His hand hovered over the controls to lower the barrier. Outside, the enemy ships had formed a ring around the Eidolon spear. Inside, time felt suspended, every heartbeat stretching into eternity. The memory of past battles, of the rift, of the Leviathan Gate, of the shadows of the forgotten, pressed against him, urging him forward. The hum became a roar, and in its depths he thought he heard the voice of the Ascendant Elder again. The fracture is not meant to be mended. Kaelin lowered the barrier. Light swallowed the chamber, reality twisted. Chapter 12. The Fracture Unleashed. The moment Commander Kaelin lowered the artifact's containment barrier, the Eidolon's spear shuddered violently. The ship's metal bones sang under the sudden surge of raw, untamed energy that erupted like a star going supernova inside the forward hold. The artifact, no longer restrained, breathed light and shadow into every corner of the chamber. A cosmic storm condensed into crystalline form. Crew scrambled, alarms blaring and voices shouting in a cacophony that barely registered beneath the overwhelming pulse of power. The very air crackled with electricity as strands of golden and violet energy spilled out like serpents, coiling through the decks, threading through consoles, crawling over bulkheads. Kaelin stood rooted as the artifact's influence seeped into his mind. His vision fractured and blurred. He saw glimpses of infinite realities folding into one another, the web of space-time unraveling beneath impossible forces. Images flashed, galaxies burning, ancient wars reignited, and faces from long-dead friends and foes alike, whispering warnings and accusations that echoed through his soul. Outside the shattered moon's orbit, the enemy ships that had encircled the Eidolon's spear recoiled, caught in the artifact's devastating radiance. Their hulls warped and twisted as the energy cascaded over them, the strange organic metal fusion failing against a force no technology could withstand. One by one, they exploded into clouds of shimmering debris, their dark forms dissolving like shadows at dawn. Yet the victory was not without cost. The artifact's power surged beyond control. The Eidolon's spear trembled as spatial distortions blossomed across the ship's hull. Gravity flickered wildly, rooms bent and stretched, and reality itself began to fray. Crew members screamed as invisible forces tore at their bodies and minds, dragging them into horrific visions and nightmarish realms. Captain Arden's voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. Evacuate the hold. Contain the breach. But the artifact's energy was a tempest that could not be easily caged. Lieutenant Mira raced to the engineering bay, her mind torn between desperation and determination. She initiated emergency protocols, diverting power to reinforce the structural integrity fields, but every system groaned under the strain. The rift's echoes had seeped in through the fracture, carrying with them ancient malice and unspoken horrors. In the command center, Kaelin fought to maintain his grip on reality. The artifact's voices surged like a chorus inside his mind, pulling him toward madness or revelation. He grasped for memories of past battles. The Leviathan Gate's betrayal, the shadows of the forgotten sacrifice, the Ascendant's warnings, each a guidepost in the storm threatening to consume him. As the Eidolon's spear drifted dangerously close to collapse, a massive rupture tore open in the space-time fabric just outside the ship. From it emerged a colossal figure, wreathed in energy both dazzling and terrifying. An ancient ascendant, awoken by the artifact's call, bearing the weight of millennia and the fury of the forgotten stars. The crew froze, breath caught between hope and dread. The war was no longer a battle for territory or survival. It was a reckoning with forces beyond comprehension, where every choice echoed across the cosmos. Kaelin's final thought before the chapter, and book, ends as a question burning hotter than the rift itself. Had they unleashed salvation or annihilation? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to follow along with the next installment of this 20-part series.